Okay, welcome everyone, Mark again, and now what to do with the phonemes. So first of all, we have this guy, and we have a couple phonemes, and these are already loaded in, and I guess they have something in range, so that's an active value. I want to link the AI, the L, the, and the E, because these are quite similar. So as you see, we have this first panel, and these are quite similar in shape. Okay, so one is made from another, but the big deal here is it's not just the shape of the mouth; it is also the shape of the tongue. So the tongue is also affected. Now just let me show it. We don't need this one now. So when you are opening up the mouth, now we can open it up, go to perspective, check it, and we have this the tongue as well, and also the morpher. So the first three is already loaded in. We can adjust it, we can change it, we have some influence on here. So what I have to do is I have to link this controller not just on the head, but also to the tongue. To do that, we don't need all directions, so we don't need this top and bottom and everything. We need only the top, left, and right, because it's only three phonemes. So what's the difference here? If I'm selecting this guy, this was already made it the same way, so I copied a couple segments, added the text, the indicator to speed up some time, and but we have to look for something that in the motion panel, this Y position, this limit is actually set to 3 and 0. Okay, because this is the initial position, and when I start moving it up here, that will be the 3. So this is the limit range. Now another thing when you're making a controller like this one is the pivot point, because when you're creating a rectangle like this, the pivot point is automatically placed at the center. So it's a 6 by 3. Let me check it here. 6 by in the right side. I can check it. So 6. It was already there. I'm just not so patient. Okay, here we go. It's 0.5. And as you see, if I'm switching to move mode, the pivot point is centered here. Now it's not good. I want to make sure that the pivot point of the item is set to this situation, this point. So technically what we have to do is to transfer the position of the pivot point to this bottom state. Going into the hierarchy and pivot, affect pivot only, and we are just moving it away, not in this direction, to the Z. Okay, just let me, just by eye, and I'm coming down here. Okay, it's actually perfect. So leaving as it is. Right now the color is not the luckiest one, so I will switch to something stronger. Blues usually makes good. It's quite visible on this grayish highlight on the grid. And so this one is selected, and right now the pivot point is turned on. So whenever you're creating your circle controller, then you can add it, Shift A, and now it's ready. I like to keep a center and some markers here because it gives me a visual feedback, but it's really up to the person. So there's nothing else, just working with feedbacks. Alright, now this is how it's done, and once it is ready you can make a copy before you're actually linking the text, before attaching the text to the rectangle, so you can later on edit these guys. Now what I do is animation reaction manager, and what we do need is we need a new master. This master will be this circle and the position, and that will be X position, so it is a horizontal movement. That's right. So we have this first master. Let me look at here, and we need a slave, and that first slave will be the head, modified object, morpher, and this CME, this is the target that we are looking for. That's nice. What I have to do, I have to create the action, so I move it to the opposite extreme, selecting the actual target that I want to influence. So create state and 100. Okay, so from 0 100 right, the E is performed. Now I will go back and reset. Master is the same, but what I do need is another target, and this is the reason why I keep the Jo open, because it's easier to access to the tongue. So master same, I need a new slave. New slave is from the tongue modified object, and we have a morpher here. And what I do need is a tongue E. Situation is the same. I need to create the action. Action affects the tongue this time. I already have this 0 state. What I do need is the change, so that's my change at the bottom. It's 100 here. Okay, now at the opposite directions, what I do have, do I need a new master? No, because it's simply the same movement, so just the opposite direction. So I have to just reset, select the master, and add a new slave. New slave will be head, modified object, morpher, and AI. Now this is AI is added. What I do have to do, creating action. Action influences AI. And when action happens, AI has to be in 100 state. That's nice. So what I do reset again, because I have to add another more slave. Add slave, this time it's the tongue, modified object, morpher, AI. Now when I start moving to the left, that's my action, and my action has to influence this AI tongue. It already has the 0 state, and my new state says, okay, when it's -3, this is also switched to 100. So from 0 100, I have an AI change, and also I have this E angle. Okay, what I do need, another master, and another master is everything set to 0, and add master. Master is this time as the vertical movement, so position, and this is the Y position, and limited controller. That's it. Now I have to add to the new master, I have to add some slaves. First slave will be the face, so modified object, morpher, and that will be the L, the sound. And first I need to create my action. Action influences L, the sound, and it happens when it's free, it must be at 100. Revert back to the initial 0, and what I have to do, add a new slave. New slave will be the tongue. Okay, I just missed, so yeah. So here is the master, add slave, now selecting modified object, morpher, tongue, L, the, and 0 state initialized, and just make the change, influences L of the tongue state, and I will add another statement. When it's free, it has to be at 100. So right now I have this combination. Now there are some danger zones, not in all cases, but usually you don't want to really mix up things. So it's quite illogical if you create too many blends within phonemes. So, okay, you have AI and then you have L the. Okay, it is possible, but not in every cases. And as you see, the transformation is a little bit better and smoother if you are just simply moving to the opposite target. Okay, like in the shortest way. But if you are taking this position, that actually generates 100% the sound and 100% E sound, and simply in real life it's just, there's no point in here. So, but you cannot restrict this one. The easiest thing is to do is not using it. But if you are afraid that you make a bad practice and directly you want to animate this one, you can do that, but it will not generate that much nice of a look. So what I do like to do is just go in and select a segment and just make a copy and select this point, and okay, corner, and just crop this off. Okay, so I just show that we don't really need that kind of a area, so we can crop it off just to make it easier to remember that it's not really useful. So I will go select spline, and if you are in spline mode, you can actually mirror spline parts. So going down here, here's the mirror function, and I want to mirror about the pivot. Here's the pivot point, so I want to mirror it to the opposite direction. So this is the horizontal mirror is fine, and I want to make a copy, and I want to mirror it about the pivot. So when I hit, now I have a new copy of this point that is mirrored reflective to the pivot. So here we go, this is it. And if I'm in parent mode, I can reset, and also here. So that's just showing up that okay, we have some kind of a safety zone. So if we are within here, that works fine. It will be okay. Now there's much more. You can add more tricks to these kind of sets, because you don't want to create too many joysticks. So if you can combine two joysticks, that's usually a cool idea. So just let me show an example for this. What you can do is actually you can create a joystick in a joystick. So it sounds weird, but it's not that weird. So what we will do, we will create a smaller circle, and this smaller circle will be about 0.5, so it's 1 centimeter in diameter, and now we can actually convert it into an edit of a spline. And just to make a difference, we can make it red, and I will join this to the mood controller, and to make it a little bit, make a pop and easier to select, because sometimes splines are heavy to work with, especially if they are smaller. We can add something that's called outline, so outline by 0.1, and now we have a double center for this guy, so it's a little bit easier to go in and click here. It's easier to find the double edge, and I will use Shift A and move it here, and this will be the parent. So this inside controller will be linked to this particular controller. So when this control is moved, the inside joystick will be also moved. Okay, so that will also happen. Just let me close the Joe, close up, and let me select this controller. Okay, it's super nice. I want to create a protrusion. Okay, so this protrusion and this force close. Why not? I can link it there. Usually it's not the location there I'm linking, but in this case it's just for the demonstration. I will present the final file that would be a little bit different, but to get the logic how to build up something in a step-by-step, I just want to show it here now. So closing Reaction Manager now, and this is what I will link. Okay, so beside the smile, I will link these two morphs to that center joystick. So go back in front and center joysticks, and everything's linked. Let me reset the position of this one, and it is a little bit easier if this one is also centered accurately. So instead of this 17, just let me, I'm sorry, minus 27, not 17. This one's 25. That's correct. Now this one's linked, but it's not limited yet. So what I will do is I need one limitation. This is up and down. Reason is simple. We have two morphs. We want to tie it to this controller. So up will be the mouth out, and bottom will be the mouth in. Lips out, lips in. So what's next is to go to the motion panel, and we need Y position. So Y position will be limited with a float limit, and that will be, in this case, it will be 1 plus 1 minus 1. So 1 and minus 1. So this is the result. I can go up and down, and because I don't want to move it anywhere on the side and don't want to move it in the 3D space, I will lock out all those. So 0, and going back to the hierarchy, link info, and of course I don't need any rotation, any scale, and I don't need z-axis, and this time I don't need x as well. So right now I can move only up and down. That's perfect. This makes sense. So I'm just going back 0, and what I have to do to make it a master, so animation and reaction manager, I want to add a value. There's no name, but anyway, so it's position, and I'm using only the Y position, a limited control Bezier float. Fine. What I do need, I need a slave. So first of all, look for the master, make sure that the master is selected, add slave. Slave is the head, modified object morpher, and mouth protrude. That will be, when I move it up, I want to mouth protrude perform 100%. Okay, so now mouth up and perform the 100%. Okay, don't get me wrong. So when I do this, if I move all the, the mood joystick, it has no effect on the protrusion. So protrusion is a separate stuff. So it's just because it's a tiny movement, and we are building up a hierarchy in a control panel. So you don't animate this protrusion all the time. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you want it, sometimes you want to add some expression or add some mistakes or some variations in the speech, but you don't need it all the time. So this way you don't need to create a whole separate control panel just for this protrusion. You can include it and attach it to something existing. Now, okay, so what I have to do is just make it back, reset this guy, and what we do need, we have already a master, we just need another slave for the other direction. So modified object and skin, and where it is, this is the mouth forced, so it's a forced close. Okay, that will be, the action comes, action defines forced target will be set to -1 represents 100. Okay, sometimes people ask, yeah, can you change this value to 100? Yeah, you can change it to higher than 100. Yeah, you can change it. It makes nothing, okay, because you have a morph panel, and the morph is actually loading the data, so you're not influencing the data, you're just changing the amount of appearance, and there's only yes or no, and when you're just dealing with 100, that's 100%, so it's an absolutely yes, so the transformation will be absolutely visible, but there's no point to change the values higher. Okay, so it's not working that way. If you want to make it lower, however, that works. So 80%, yeah, you can do that, or you can do the 50. So that will really affect, but above 100, there's no point to make a change. Okay, so right now we have this. Just let me show it in perspective. So, whoa, and you can also make a smile. So, yeah, smiling instead of that, and this kind of weird face. Oh, look, quite idiotic, but at least it's working. Okay, now what happens if you want to repair something? Okay, if you have to change the morphs, what you can do, Now, please keep in mind when you're using a morpher modifier is kind of a standalone. So once you load in something, it is there. You can actually delete these files if you wish. I don't really suggest, but if you have absolutely a fully done model, you can do that. If you accidentally delete something, you can still make a copy. So if you have no base file, for example, if you have no any morphs and you want, but you already have a head with a morpher, you can always select this guy, shift and copy, or Ctrl V and copy, and when you're deleting the original skin and morpher, you still have the original head, so you can always go back to an original foundation head. But in that case, you will lose the effect to model. You have to remodel some of the things. Now, if you want to repair, just take a look at the protrusion. So, okay, so imagine that I've just changed my mind. So this protrusion is not enough. I want to make it way weirder. So I want to make it weird. Just soft selection is turned on, and edge distance, I would turn off edge distance because I want to affect both lips, so not just the upper one. Edge distance helps me to limit just for the upper, to the upper. So I will just use this one, and I want to change it. Okay, it's a kind of a Pinocchio mouth. Oh, okay. Now it's ugly. So we're moving back, and what I want to do is imagine that probably I'm in the middle of an animation, and I want to make a correction. Now what to do? So I just have to go to the morpher, select the channel I'm looking for. But that is where we are under the phonemes. No. Mouth in, mouth, eyes. Here's protrude. Now I'm selecting protrude and going in and reloading morph target. And at the moment when I'm reloading it, it will update everything. Okay, so this is a good thing to keep in mind. If you want to make corrections, you can do it this way. It's not a good tactics if you just sloppy in modeling, if you're not accurate in modeling, and you always think that, okay, I can change it on the fly with the morpher. It's not a good tactics, but it is there. So if you want to change something, it is possible. Can you add morphs? Of course. Can you add controllers? Yes, you can add controllers during the animation. So if you want to correct something, if you need a special expression, a full face expression, not just, you know, mouth, you want to affect the ears and eyes and everything, yes, you can do that. It's just time consuming, sometimes it's hard, it's not that flexible, but the fundamental, the basic movements and everything is quite a good thing, so it's quite easy to use and quite flexible. Now, these are the main types of controllers and linkings and logics and some kind of an indicators, using different signs to get through this. And I will show a not final but a closer example of how this whole panel is designed. Okay, so see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.